Robert Plank Show, episode 173, The Bacon System. Get boatloads of traffic using content marketing and Google Analytics with Brian Basilico. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show. This is the podcast where we talk about making money. We're here today with Brian Basilico, the Bacon Guy. He's an award-winning and internationally recognized author, speaker, and coach, the founder and president of B2B Interactive Marketing Inc., which is an award-winning marketing consulting and production company in Aurora, Illinois, home of Wayne's World. Now, B2B helps companies and nonprofits market their products and services through the effective use of online tools, including websites, blogs, email, social networking, Google, SEO, YouTube, and more. All the good stuff you need. How are things today, Mr. Brian?
Excellent, man. Absolutely excellent. Party on, Robert. Woo woo.
Cool. I mean, I can tell already that we're going to have a fun call today. So, can you tell us about what it is that you do and what makes you special?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been doing marketing for 30 years and I literally 35. And so I've been doing things like I've owned recording studios, I've worked in video production. And now what I do is take all of that experience and try to pull it in and help people really utilize the internet in ways that's going to help them grow their business and make money. And it's all through training and teaching. That's really my superpower, is teaching people how to do it. As a matter of fact, my tagline is I show you why and teach you how.
Awesome. So as, along those lines, as far as you know, showing them why and teaching them how, and we listed all of the different things that you can do for people like YouTube, SEO, Google. I mean, what's on your mind these days? What's getting you excited about some of those activities that you're helping people with?
Well, the biggest thing is content marketing. I mean, it's really how to produce great content and then how to get it out there and how to draw traffic back into your website. My last book, which was my fourth, called The Bacon System, is all about that. It's a 12-step program, just like, AA and stuff like that. And I call it's for people that are addicted to trying things and never getting the results that they want. And so really what I'm excited about is showing people how to utilize all these tools and really creating great content. I mean, how to create great blogs, how to do videos. I just put up my first video ad on Facebook, and trying to figure out what is the secret sauce that's going to help them make more money. Because one of the things I really want to try to do is help people avoid spending money where they're not making any return on investment. That's huge.
And that makes a lot of sense, and I think that a lot of people need that. So as far as content marketing, I mean, I don't know, like when someone mentions content marketing, for whatever reason, what gets into my head is one or two extremes. One extreme is someone who goes, overseas, or goes to Fiverr, or goes to Upwork and just hires a bunch of just crappy articles that are just more quantity than quality, and like basically reporting the news of everything happening on the internet, which isn't really helpful. And then the other extreme that goes in my mind for me are some of these blog posts that I come across where they're ranked really high in the search engines, and I click on them and they're really great. I'm thinking about like Neil Patel kind of stuff, where it's like a 20-page blog post with a table of contents, with infographics, with stuff to share on Twitter, with maybe like fancy videos and stuff. And I look at that and I say, whoa, that's awesome. But then as far as me replicating that, it seems like a lot of work to write a 20-page long blog post every day. So can you talk about your thoughts about that, as far as like, is there a middle ground, or is there a secret to avoiding either of those two extremes?
Absolutely. I mean, ain't nobody got time for that, man. I mean, nobody's going to sit there and read 20-page articles all the time. It's too much. People have a short attention span. And so what I suggest that people do is do things at least on a weekly basis. Here's my plan. This is what I do. I have a podcast called Bacon Podcast, of course. Every Monday, I do what I call a monocast. And the monocast is basically me talking for 10 minutes about a subject. Last week, it was Google Analytics, how the 3 mistakes that people make with Google Analytics. The next thing I do is I take that and I get it transcribed at at rev.com. And then I take that exact content and convert it into a blog. So I'm not really spending a lot of time doing that. And it ends up being about a 1,500 word blog, which is, about where people are hitting their, tired point. Usually between, 500 words to 1,000 is where most blogs kind of fit. And so I don't have to do a lot of work to create that second piece of content. Then the third one is what we're doing right now, which is an expert interview. So I interview some really incredible people, Armin Morin, Joel Comm. I mean, I get some of the best experts out there. and they're talking about specific topics, how to write great sales copy, how to use video to promote your business. So what I'm doing, and then on Thursday, I take all of that and I put it into an email digest. Here's the 3 pieces of content I created this week, and I'm done. So it's really setting up a system like that where people don't have to spend, giga hours trying to do something, but still it's reaching their audience in a way that their audience wants to be reached. And now they're touched in multiple platforms. They can listen to it, they can read it. They've got a lot of different ways to consume the content. So it's really about creating a plan around that.
Awesome. So monocast and transcribe it, and that becomes the blog post. And I'm looking at one of those right now at b2b-im.com/blog, where you have, and what's cool about this is, I mean, not only is it transcribed, but it's edited to the point where you can't even tell that it was spoken out, and you added in graphics and stuff like that. And then you have the expert interviews where you have stuff like, Joel Comm hops on, or Armin Morin hops on. And so, you mentioned, Brian, at the tail end of that, about having some kind of a schedule. And so I always hear about this kind of thing, like an editorial calendar. And every time a blogger type of person tries to explain it to me, it just sounds like a whole big mess. So do you have like a simple solution for the rest of us? Do you have a way of, so I mean, like, you have this day-to-day thing, and you do a certain thing on Monday, a certain thing on Thursday. So, like, I mean, what does your day-to-day look like? I mean, do you just record this content like the day of, or do you do a bunch of like batching, or like what does your day-to-day kind of thing look like as far as filling that editorial calendar?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's 2 different ways to look at it. First and foremost, my editorial calendar is based on who I interview. So, whatever topic they're talking about, that's the topic of the week. So that really depends on who I can get on the show. I do batch a lot of them. I've got, 4 or 5 in the can at any given time. But what I suggest that people do to really get this down, and I actually teach this in my class, it's called the Bacon System, is I have an editorial calendar for people for whatever content they want to create, all the way from January to December. And if you break it down like this, okay, and I've got one client who does it so well. He does barcode testing. And what we've done with him is we've broken down his audiences into 4 audiences. We call them 101, 201, 301, and 401. 101 is, I don't know what a barcode is. Number 2, I know what barcodes are, but I need to understand it better. Number 3 is we have barcodes that we're testing, and we're sending things to Walmart. And if Walmart can't read the barcode, they're going to send it back. We're going bankrupt. And 401 is going to pharmaceutical companies, and if the barcodes are bad, people die. So what he's done is he writes out over the course of a month a 101, a 201, a 301, and a 401. And if there's 5 weeks in the month, he'll do a product review. So he's got that set up where he can actually map up the entire year of his 101 articles. That means he has to write out 12 topics for 101 and lays it out, and the same thing for 2, 3, and 4. And what he's noticed through the effective use of Google Analytics and the inquiries that he's gotten on his website is that the 101s and the 401s are the ones that are reading his articles more, and the 401s have a lot more money, and he's been able to double his business because he's been able to attract the right clients by putting out content that matches their expectations. So it's really about just understanding your clients, mapping out what you're going to do over the course of 4 weeks, and then extrapolating that over a year.
And I like the way that you put that, because that really makes things a lot simpler, doesn't it? So instead of
Yep.
trying to think, I have to think of 100 pieces of content, you narrow it down by the month, narrow it down by the week, and then even just doing that really sort of simplifies it. And so you mentioned in that case study there that he has the 101, 201, 301s, and the 401s, and the 10. Did I hear you right, where the 101s and the 401s are the ones that are the most active, that are reading the most? I mean, what about the those middle people?
Yeah, the middle people are acting on it, but they're not as active as the other ones. And, 101s generally aren't going to spend a lot of money with you. 401s are going to spend a lot of money with you. So he's learned how to keep that up. And he's still getting those clients. It's just the volume of clients that he's getting, and the volume of return on investment for his time and his energy is really coming from those 401s. So it's really helped him to really centralize his business on where he's going to make the most profit. And that's what content marketing does. It helps you see what people are interested in. That's why, Google Analytics has been one of the biggest blogs and podcasts that I've had, because people are super interested in it. So that tells me, hey, I've got something here. I need to continue down that road and maybe teach people. So what I did is I created a course specifically on that. and it's at googleanalyticssecrets.com. So by the feedback I've got, I'm finding out what people really want to learn about. And then I can turn that into products, into courses, into speeches, into things that nature. That's what you're doing with content marketing is you're really almost like surveying your crowd and trying to figure out exactly what is it they're interested in and how can you help them. And of course, we're in business. How can you make money?
Right, and I like the way that you kind of put that. It's almost like you're surveying them without surveying them because, at least in my experience, like whenever I've tried to ask people like what they want to know more about or what they want to buy, like they either lie or they don't seem to know. And so just by looking at the behavior and stuff like that has been more valuable. So you mentioned a couple of times now Google Analytics, and so I mean you set that up, and I mean could you tell us all about like what that is exactly and what are you looking for? Like are you looking for like posts with the most that are like read the longest, like the most like time spent on the page, or posts with the most traffic? I mean, so what is Google Analytics and what are you looking for when you set that up?
Well, Google Analytics obviously is free. You can set it up if you got a WordPress. It's just you take what's known as a code, you plug it in, and it basically gives you feedback on all your pages. What the average person does is they go look at the, audience overview and they say, "Yay, I got more traffic," or "Ooh, I didn't get as much traffic." But what you really want to dig into is, A, where's your traffic coming from? What are your referral sources? Is the time you spend on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Pinterest, on blog aggregators, because like my blog is actually aggregated with business to community. And so, I might get some traffic from there. So I want to see where traffic is getting to my website. Then I want to see after they read that blog, what pages are they going to? Are they going to any other pages? I try to put a call to action on every single blog post. And are they taking that call to action? Are they going to the places where I want them to go to sign up for my list, to buy my products, come see me speak, whatever it is? So you've got to measure the time that they're spending on the page. You've got to measure where they're entering and exiting. You've got to measure a whole bunch of different things, but it really depends on your business. I mean, every business has its unique DNA. A dentist and a plumber are going to have different things. So you got to figure out exactly what is it that you're trying to do. Get them to a schedule appointment page, get them to download a resource guide so that they get on your email list. I mean, you have to come up with that plan of what makes the most sense. And Google Analytics gives you feedback on what's happening on your website.
Cool, and I like the way that you laid that out in that like there's those criteria, right? And so if I'm trying out Facebook traffic, or I'm trying out Twitter traffic, and if I see that I get a lot of traffic from say Twitter, then I can say, okay, well now that piece of it is worth my time, and if some other part is not worth it, then I can sort of dial it back. And so would you say like if someone was like if you had like that dentist office who wanted someone to get the appointment scheduled, or like a plumber who wanted someone to download a PDF, or whoever the person was, should they just set up Google Analytics and figure out that goal and just start pumping out content? I mean, how do they get from having a blog with no content to the point where they're looking at all these charts and graphs and things?
Well, a lot of times the owner of the business doesn't want to do that. So what they do is they'll hand it off to their 20-something because they know how to tweet. And really what needs to happen is they need to educate the person who's managing whatever it is, their online marketing, their social media, their blogs, and those kind of things. And I've worked with plumbers and dentists and, all those different kinds of people. And usually it's assigned to somebody. So what they really need to do is get the person trained so they understand what they're doing and get some kind of system in place and understand what they're measuring and why, and set up a plan so that if they're putting out these blog posts, are they going to get the specific things? A plumber is great because, let's do HVAC because this is much easier. There are 4 seasons. There's heating season, there's cooling season, and there's the 2 in between. So you can talk about heating, you could talk about cooling, then you could talk about Nest thermostats, like digital thermostats, air duct cleaning, it's something that is outside of that time frame. So you can really kind of measure specifically if those are driving traffic to specific pages. If I put out a blog about getting my furnace serviced, are they ending up back on that furnace service page where they can set an appointment? So you've really got to kind of think it through step by step what you want them to do. It's just like any other kind of sales funnel, except you've really got to have a good visualization of where you want them to go and then measure the results of what is really happening.
And I like that the way that you're laying all this out is that it's very systematic. I mean, there's for sure like there's the thinking aspect of it, but it sounds like that people don't need to be agonizing over themselves and thinking about, oh well, let me craft this really beautiful blog post about Nest thermostats and things like that. They can put out lots of things quickly, or have the 20 something do it, or outsource it, and then kind of like do all these small tasks. It sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about, I mean, truly is about having a plan, having a system. And that's when I said that I have a 12-step program for people that try things and don't get the results they want. A lot of times it's because they try it and they don't know what to measure. They don't know how to set up that funnel. They don't know what the expectation is. If you put blog posts out there and you don't have calls to action in them, you're not going to get anybody to do anything. People generally do what you tell them to do, you know? And the other thing is you got to make sure that you don't overcomplicate it, because when people are confused, they choose not to choose. So if you give them three things to do, they won't pick any. If you give them one thing to do, then you've got a path that you can measure on how that's working. So you got to be super clear as to what you want to achieve.
So, do you personally work off some kind of a checklist to make sure that all these things are taken care of, as far as like a clear call to action, no split call to action? Do you have somewhere, or do you go off of a checklist like that?
I do. Yeah. And a matter of fact, if you get the Bacon System, if you go to Amazon, it's called The Bacon System. It's a book. I go through all of that, and I actually have homework and checklists for each one of those sections. So there are 12 chapters. They can get the 12 checklists off of that. And there's much more. I mean, I've got lots of different things. I've got a productivity bundle, a checklist bundle, Google Analytics. I mean, different ways that I use with my coaching clients, that I give them these tools and I show them how to use it, so they're very, very organized and very, very deliberate into what they're doing.
Nice. And then it sounds like by doing that, they can get a lot of stuff pumped out in a short amount of time, and then get to that point more quickly where they can then look at the analytics and then kind of adjust from there. And so, off the top of your head, like, I mean, we don't have to go into like the whole entire checklist or anything like that, but I mean, what are your thoughts on traffic and promotion and stuff? Like, it's one thing for someone to, make a blog post, but off the top of your head, are there a handful of things that most people should be doing in order to get that blog post to have some reach?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, you want to make sure that you're sharing it, the right way. And one of the things I suggest, especially inside of Facebook, is if you put it to your business page in Facebook, and a lot of times I set people up where it auto publishes to certain things. You've got to make sure that you're sharing it on your personal page, because inside of Facebook, if you have 1,000 likes, you're going to get maybe 5 people who see it now. And that's because they want you to boost the ads, and because what used to be business pages is now being replaced with sponsored content. So you have to create the relationships, and you have to be willing to take that content and share it in ways that people are going to find value in it. But if all you do is share your business content, it doesn't work. So here's one of the things that I do is every single day, I do something in the morning called the quote of the day. It's known as Deep Bacon Thoughts, which is just just inspirational quote. The end of the day, I do a caption contest, and it's a goofy picture where people just write in their captions. The thing that does is two things. Number one, it expands my audience and gives me a broader reach to people. Two, it creates more engagement. So the algorithm of Facebook says this guy is getting a lot of traffic. Let's show his stuff in people's news feeds better. So it's a matter of learning how to get that out there and how to get people to respond to what it is that you're doing. Traffic, traffic in general, I mean, there's two ways to get it. Either you're generating content and doing it the right way, or you can pay for it by paying for Google ads or Facebook ads.
All right, that makes it really simple. And what you mentioned there about the content on social media, like, I've noticed that even just by accident, I've kind of done that as well, where I notice that if I only post, promotional stuff, links to things, then there's almost no interaction. But then if I post those quotes of the day, or if I find like an interesting link, then I'll share it on there. And I've also seen some, pages and groups and things like that. They'll do things like, say, like, what's it's like Self Promotion Friday or something like that, and they'll say, everyone can spam their link basically, but just for today and just in this post, just to get that extra interaction. So it sounds like that, like you've said this entire call, that if you're deliberate about what you're doing and you know what the goal is, then there's all these little things that you can try that add up to a lot to get you in that right direction.
Exactly. And as I said, I mean, some people, I've got certain clients that, don't want to do that. All they want to do is just pay for Facebook ads or pay for Google ads, which is fine. I got one client that spends $5,000 a month, but if they get a job, it's worth $50,000 to $150,000. So that makes sense. The smaller businesses can't afford to do that because them potentially getting, the way I look at things is I always look at ROI. If I spend $1, I want to make three because I got to pay for the service. I got to pay for my time to learn it, implement it, do whatever. And then I got to make a profit. It's not 1 to 2, it's 1 to 3. So you have to sit down and figure out, is this activity something that is actually generating income? And can I really measure and see the return on investment on what I'm doing?
Nice. So that way that it's not just a shot in the dark. So sort of along those lines, and this might be like, I don't know, like a loaded question or the wrong question, but if
Hmm.
someone was pursuing some of this content marketing stuff, every day, if they're putting out like a blog post every day, or they did like what you mentioned about like the monocasting and the transcription and the blog, or they just if they like took some sorts of action to keep on pumping out this content and keep on promoting. I mean, in general, and like, how soon can they expect it to start picking up speed? I mean, should they be doing some of these daily activities for a month or two or 6 months or a year? I mean, how long in general does it take for this kind of thing to start picking up?
Well, the 12-step program is a 12-week program, and that's 3 months. And that's generally how long it takes to get solid in what you're doing and start to see a return on investment. The real return on investment happens 6 months, 12 months into it. I mean, I've been doing my podcast. I'm hitting episode 200 next week. And slowly but surely, I went from having 100 listeners to now 3,000 listeners a month. And it takes time. It takes time to get the word out there. It takes time for people to give you social proof. It takes time for people to share your things. And that's, of course, what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a tribe where people know, like, and trust you enough that they say, hey, check out this article, by Brian or Robert. And so now you're starting to see that return on investment. That's where the magic happens. When people start sharing your stuff to their audience and they say, I know, like, and trust this person, that's where you're going to start seeing that return on investment.
And I've noticed that too with my own podcast, because what I used to do is I used to post only one written post every month. And then I think then that turned into, once I added the podcast component, I think I made like one podcast episode per month instead of that. And then that moved into one per week. And then that moved into five a week, like, so like pretty much every weekday. and
Hmm.
and I've noticed too, like, all those things that you're saying, where first of all I sort of had to figure out, okay, well, here's the point where I want to get to. Like, I think right now we're on episode like 175 or so of this show, so I'm right there with you at the almost at 200 episodes, and I told myself, okay, well, I'm gonna get to episode 200 before slowing down, before stopping, before looking at it. And as far as like those daily actions, doing the interviews, and getting them transcribed and putting them on there, and all those tedious things, there were some days or some weeks where I felt like I didn't feel like doing it. And other weeks where I
Hmm.
did, but I kind of, I forced myself through those hard times to get to that point. And I've noticed that as well. Just that I thought beforehand that maybe I would be like, what do they call it, like oversaturated or too much being there. But what I've noticed is that there's probably no such thing. And I've noticed that as I've been posting more, and as I've been, actually being, I guess, like checking all the right boxes, and making sure to promote everything on Twitter, everything on Facebook, follow up with guests. Once I'm doing all those little tasks, I've noticed as well that the audience has been growing and growing the more that I do it.
Exactly. It's all about consistency. People love consistency. That's why, I've got the plan that I have is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If I'm consistently mailing out the same email every Thursday, less people drop off my list. People are constantly looking for a new podcast on Monday, a new podcast on Wednesday. They know what to look for, and that really helps grow the audience.
Awesome. And so, when you see people who are, maybe people who are maybe struggling with content marketing, or people whose content marketing isn't working too well, are you seeing the same mistake happening over and over with content marketing?
Yeah. I talk about it this way. People listen to two different radio stations, WIIAM and WIIFM. WIIAM is what is interesting about me. WIIFM is what is in it for me. And what happens too often when people fail with content marketing is they're constantly talking about themselves rather than really focusing on content that's going to provide value to their audience. Every time you do something, whether it's a podcast, a blog, an ebook, I don't care what it is, you should be striving to create something that people would be willing to pay for. And that's the way I look at it. So, people would not be willing to pay to hear about you and your success stories. What they would pay for is, how to build a better mousetrap, how to make a better bacon sandwich, whatever it is. They want some kind of outcome for them in it. And that's where most people fail. The other thing where they fail too is lack of consistency, erratically doing it. They do 2 one week and none for a month. And then thirdly, they get to the point where they say this isn't working and they quit right at the point where it's just about to take off.
Okay, so know what the outcome is and be consistent because you might be stopping right before you get to the goal. And so, along those lines, what are your thoughts on people who are worried about giving away too much information? Like if someone says, well, if I'm putting out all these blog posts, all these podcast episodes, the monocast, all these different things, like what do you say to someone who says, well, what's left as far as the paid products, and what should I decide about what should people pay for and what should I give away?
Well, generally speaking, you could give away all your content, but the thing is that people need help executing whatever it is that you do. So what you're doing is you're putting yourself out there as an expert. You can give everybody the entire recipe, but chances of them actually putting all the pieces together and making, the Colonel's 12 herbs and spices chicken are pretty slim. It's never going to taste the same. What they really need is you, and what you have to do is build the case for the fact that you can help them take them to the next level. So don't be afraid to give away your best stuff. I'm a coach, but I've had a lot of coaches. And one coach basically told me that flat out. He says, Brian, you've got incredible knowledge. You've got a lot of experience. Give away your best stuff because people will never, ever be able to execute it without your assistance, the way that you can help them and grow their business. They could try it, but they're never going to have that encouragement. They're never going to have, if they run into problems, can they get the solutions? I mean, they really need you and your resources to really take them over that hump.
I like it. So it's like information is only one part of it. They don't have your, experience and the wisdom and all the little nuggets that you've accumulated over the years.
Exactly.
Can I like what you've said so far about content marketing and all your unique insights and stuff like that. So where can people find you? Where can they find, your book, The Bacon System, and your Google Analytics course and your blog? Where should they go to get all that stuff?
Well, the easiest way to find me is just Google Brian Basilico, BrianBasilico. If you want to find my books, do the same thing in Amazon. They're all up there. If you want to find the Google Analytics course, it's googleanalyticssecrets.com. If you want to find the podcast, it's baconpodcast.com. And then the blogs are at b2b-im.com, which is B2B Interactive Marketing. That's what the IM stands for.
Cool. So lots of websites all over the place, which means you practice what you preach as far as the content marketing, as far as pumping out all the useful, helpful stuff. So I appreciate everything you had to say to us and help us out with content marketing, Brian, and thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Robert, man, it was a pleasure. I love the opportunity. Thanks, man. I hope it helps your peeps.
This concludes another action-packed episode of The Robert Plank Show. Go to robertplank.com to check out other episodes.